back to my channel. We're here today to chat a little bit about my past, present, and future reading. I've been reading a lot this month. I have this goal, this kind of goal, to try to read 30 books this month. I'm still working on it. I'm not quite on track like I was on day 3, but I'm pretty close. Today is November 14th and I have finished 10 or 11 books and I have some other things on the go, so I don't know. Maybe I could accomplish it this month. Maybe. We'll see. The books that I've been reading so far, the books that I have finished, some of them are really small, really short. Do they even count as books? If they have an ISBN code, they're a book. So we'll get into that. So yeah, since the start of the month, I have finished, I think, 11 books. In the last week or so, I wrapped up all of these. So I finished Cry the Beloved Country by Alan Paton. I was buddy reading this with Patrice, and this was fantastic. It is a story about two men in South Africa in the middle of the 1900s. One is black, one's white, and they are neighbors, physical neighbors. They live close to each other, but they have to travel far away to find out how much their lives are going to intersect. And it is a beautiful story about relationship and how relationship changes because of a thing that is terrible, but how a terrible thing could be a catalyst for beautiful things to happen later. Man, there is so much about this book, and I'm going to do a full review, but I read that and it is more than 5 stars. I'm going to try to give you these in the order in which I read them. I finished Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. I finished, right? Because it is such a big behemoth of a book. Oh, yeah. It's a picture book. It is a picture book. And I read it to my daughter, which I probably shouldn't have, because it has kind of scary pictures. And I was worried that maybe it would affect her, but it didn't. She watches these videos on YouTube Kids that talk about vampires and witches, so I guess she understands that there are scary things. So, and monsters. Yeah, she talks about monsters. So yeah, this book didn't faze her, which was great. But I've seen this book on lists, and so I checked it out at the library for me, not for her. But we ended up reading it together, and I really enjoyed the little still kind of story. There's a little bit of a moral, where the wild things are, because the wild things are where we think the wild things are, and sometimes what we think about other people reflects what they think about us. So I like that in this story, this kid is traveling to where he thinks the wild things are, and when he gets there, they think that he's a wild thing. That was a really cool twist. I think I'm gonna do a review of that book. Can I review a picture book? We'll see. I read this one for the Skoden Readathon, I guess, but I also got this as a complimentary copy from the publishers, so I needed to read it and review it, which is why it jumped up on my priority list of books that I want to read by Indigenous authors. So Lisa Bird Wilson is a Métis Cree woman, and she's Canadian. So this book is set in Canada, and it is talking a little bit about the horrors that have been committed against the native people in a lot of ways, So in here we're reading about a little girl who is adopted by, she's of mixed native heritage, and she gets adopted by a white family, and it's a little bit about how they try to give her a life, but it's not the life that she ultimately is seeking, because she wants understanding and connection with her native background and her past. And it's a lot about how she craves connection and intimacy as she grows up because of this thing that was denied her, just knowing where she's from. So review coming. I have to talk more at length about these books. I just will not do them justice if I don't tell you more about the book. So for now, we're just mentioning them, right? Just mentioning them. I read this little book, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which I absolutely love. It's violent. There's a lot of violence in this book, but it is so well described and well placed that it gives you an understanding of a world and a culture. This book is set in the probably early 1900s in California, the Galinas, is that the name? Galinas River, Galinas Valley. But that doesn't matter. We're following migrant workers, itinerant workers, I think are what they were called, as they move from place to place looking for short-term work, hopefully to give them money to fuel their dreams. And so we're reading about two men who have dreams and how their lives change when they move from one place to the next. A little bit of what they carry with them, in terms of fears and experiences, but also about the things that they can't leave behind even when they go to new places. So there's a lot in this book. It's such a short read. It's 107 pages? But man, Steinbeck packs story into the writing. So it is a terrible story, but a beautifully told one. So you should read it. If you haven't already. Steinbeck is a classic. Maybe everybody who's watching this video has read that book. I'm the last one to read it, in which case, let's chat about it. Let's chat about Of Mice and Men by Steinbeck. So I have this copy of The Metamorphosis and Other Stories by Franz Kafka. I didn't read the other stories. I only read The Metamorphosis. But I'm counting it as a book read because I have... Do I have it? It was on this table. Yes. So a few years ago, back in the before, I used the before to refer to my time before the pandemic, before I had a child, before a lot of things about this world changed. I used to go to church all the time. I still go to church. But back then, we used to socialize with our friends. There isn't a lot of socialization these days, I feel. Anyway, my friend, she said to me, because, you know, a lot of my friends, my in real life friends, know that I read, but they don't necessarily know what I read. That's another story for a different time. But yeah, so my friend came to me and she said, have you read The Metamorphosis? And I said, no, as a matter of fact, I have not. And she said, you must read it. So she gave me a PDF printout of The Metamorphosis. And it is 96 pages, which counts as a novella, right? And this is the entire translated copy of The Metamorphosis, Planet PDF. So this could be a book, but also I needed a book that I could read on my phone at night. You know, sometimes I'm awake and the light's kind of off, but I want to read something, so I'll pull my phone out and read something. So I can read classics on Project Gutenberg, which I do. So I read Project Gutenberg Metamorphosis. I started this one, but it didn't make sense to have this as well as this as a print copy, is what I'm saying. So I read Project Gutenberg online, as well as read this one during the days. And there's a little bit of a difference in tone because the translator, I'm sure, are different. So one calls the characters Mr. Samsa, one calls him Herr Samsa because it's a German work. And there's a little bit of a difference in how some things are expressed. But what I'm saying is that on Goodreads, The Metamorphosis by itself is a single story, a single novella. And so I'm counting it. Don't call this a cheat. It's not a cheat. That's a book. Okay? So I finished The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka and I loved it. I think it was excellent. It's an excellent allegory for something that I'm not sure what it is yet. It is about a man who wakes up different, he's transformed. In the book, it is stated that he transforms into a beetle or a bug. I love the picture on here where this bug is, you know, streaming out of the room and this lady is playing violin like she's trying to lull. I don't know if it's the Pied Piper like pulling the bug towards her or pushing the bug away from the music. I don't know. But then these three men back here and they are just like so troubled by what is happening. Love that illustration. But yeah, it is about a man who gets transformed miraculously and how the people around him relate to him because they don't realize that he can still hear them and understand them even if they can't if they can't understand him. So the communication is only one way, and it's about how people talk about other people when they don't think, when they don't think the people that they're talking about can hear and listen. There's all of that. But it's also about, the things that change us and how some changes are irreversible. It's a lot of it's a lot of allegory, a lot of symbolism, but I'm not sure if there's like one main thing that we're supposed to get from that story. I got a lot of things. So yeah. Should I say it again? I may do a single book review on the story that is in this book. But yeah, The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, another title that I am checking off because I've seen it on lists as a single standalone book, and so that's what we're calling it. So the last thing that I finished so far is Weird Things Customers Say in Bookstores by Jen Campbell. Jen Campbell has her own YouTube channel. I will link her down below if you I think I did that in the haul video. So yeah, I picked this one up from the library because I saw Heidi from my Reading Live chat about it, and so I got it. I reserved it from the library. I picked it up. It's just a little over 200 pages, and it's really what it says. It is just little snippets of conversations between customers and booksellers, and a lot of them are conversations that Jen herself had. Some of them, and I think those are additions for the American edition, because the book was originally published in England. But in the American edition, there are other conversations that were contributed by booksellers in North America, Canada, and the United States. And I don't think there's anything in here from Mexico. So we're saying Canada and the United States, not the entire North America. But yeah. I like this. I like this a lot because I felt like I could visualize Jen having these conversations. Just a little bit of her personality, how her personality would drive conversations. I think even though a lot of here is customer driven. The bookseller says, "How can I help you?" and the customer says something kind of weird, and there's it continues from that. So there is that, but I found it really interesting nonetheless. I think there could have been more to the story, but it stuck with what the title said. Weird things that customers say in bookstores. So it's not reflecting so much on the bookseller and the lives that the bookseller has, which I think could have made this into a slightly different, well, it would have made it a different book, but it also wouldn't have made it the book that the title suggests. So take all of that out. I like this for what it said it was, and it was a short fun read. I read this the entirety on Saturday evening, I think. Short read. And listen, like I said, I'm chasing numbers. So yeah, those are the things that I have finished thus far. Here are all the books that I have on the go. I am currently reading for Nonfiction November. Oh yeah, this was for Nonfiction November as well. Nonfiction November, I'm reading Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer, which I started talking to my husband about the book. And he said, yeah, 142, boss, I know that. My husband's a big vehicle lover. I don't think you guys know that. But he knew the story from, I think there was a 60 Minutes article on it some years ago. So even though this story happened in 1992, which is the story is about a young man who hikes into the Alaskan wilderness and doesn't make it back out. I don't think that's a spoiler. Jon Krakauer's books seem to describe events that consume people's lives, and this one is really interesting because I'm reading about how this young man's life is consumed by his thought process and how he follows these writers and kind of takes some of what they say to heart. So he's reading like the writings of Jack London, who wrote White Fang and Call of the Wild. And I found it so interesting how Krakauer mentions that Jack London's real life was very different from what he wrote in those novels. But he also writes about Thoreau and Tolstoy and a little bit of how those authors' writings influenced this man as well. Christopher John McCandless is the name of the man who we're reading about in that book. So reading that and really, really enjoying it. But it's also kind of depressing, so I'm not reading it by itself. So far, I've gotten to about page 60. I think I'm about a quarter of the way in or so. So, also have to read some fun things. Started reading Atonement by Ian McEwan and haven't gotten very far into this, but I'm liking the story so far. It's about a kid, a girl who's writing plays, stage plays, because she wants to connect with her family members, her brother, and her cousins, and yeah. So, not very far into that one either. But I'm also reading this online, Project Gutenberg again, as well as the print version, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And I like that in the beginning of the book, you know why the book is entitled The Picture of Dorian Gray. And I find it interesting that this is the cover because in other editions, in my mind, The Picture of Dorian Gray is a beautiful visual, and this isn't. So we'll get to that later. That was for Victober, and clearly we're not in Victober anymore, but I'm still reading. Also have this that I'm reading for nonfiction November, and I started it, but I haven't gotten very far into it. I lost my bookmark, and so I don't know where I am. I'm gonna have to look. But this is Mary Seacole's autobiography. Mary Seacole was a Jamaican nurse during the Crimean War. Yeah, Crimean War. I thought I remembered that. And then I'm starting this today, The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing, and I'm going to be buddy reading this with Britta. So we're starting today. This is a big book. This is 600 and something pages. So we're going to be reading it slowly. You may hear about this for several weeks. I'm not trying to finish this for November, but it would be great if I did. So we'll see. So these are some of the books that I'm reading this week. I'm hoping that at the end of this week, I would have finished all of these and I can chat about them. So yeah, that's what I'm reading. I think I have some other things, some short books, but I'll tell you about them as the week goes on. It's only Monday. We have lots of reading to go through this week. So yeah, that's what I'm reading. Would love to hear from you. Would love to know what you're reading, what you're enjoying. Are you participating in the Skoden Readathon to celebrate Native American heritage? Or are you celebrating Nonfiction November along with Olive and all the other nonfiction readers here on YouTube and other places on the internet? Twitter. I know they're big on Twitter, but I haven't been using my Twitter. If you're on Twitter, let me know how that's going. So yeah, let's chat down there. And until we come back for another video, which is probably going to be very soon, because lots of books to review, guys. Lots of books to, a lot of bookish things to chat about. So yeah, until we come back for another video, happy reading. Bye.